Hello there, my name's James Lyne and I'm a founder at Secure Impact. Now, I'm here today to tell you about an exciting series that we're launching in 2023. There has never been a more challenging time for security leaders and CISOs to pick things to focus on. The world has never been more noisy in terms of new threats, technologies, and of course, economic headwinds. This series will release, one after the other, a set of videos that explain some of the key things you need to pay attention to. But before we dive into the details, let's first start by summarizing what we think are the most important trends to pay attention to in 2023. Of course, there continues to be the long-term impacts of the war in Ukraine, as well as the global economic headwinds, analysts forecasting the likelihood of a recession. It is very likely that security leaders' budgets aren't going to grow in 2023 or necessarily even 24. In fact, in some cases, they may shrink. Unfortunately, it isn't the same for cybercrime activities. Historical recessions have demonstrated that these can be periods where the attackers are even more active than in good economic times. That's going to put pressure on us applying our budget in more selective ways that can handle multiple categories of threat with a single investment. Security leaders are always having to deal with new working trends and new technologies, but we're in a particularly disruptive period. Take, for example, the advancements in AI that have clearly got the eyes of the regulator, with the likes of the EU AI regulations that are starting to put in place restrictions on how these technologies can be used. Stunning prototypes like ChatGPT have demonstrated the potential both for good in cybersecurity, but also for bad. Imagine how much easier it will be for cybercriminals to craft effective phishing campaigns when they can simply ask an AI to generate new copies of those campaigns, one after the other. The ability to deepfake may lead to even more convincing abilities to social engineer, snaring clicks on a whole new scale to anything we've seen before. These technologies hold promise, but in the short term, they also hold a lot of threat. Now, it feels funny to follow on from something high-tech like AI here with something more basic, but the cybercriminals are experts in doing what works. Ransomware and phishing will remain highly prevalent through 23 and likely 24. And that's because it works. Phishing is an oldie but goodie, but still an effective way of hacking the human mind as a means of distribution and stealing information. It's also incredibly likely that ransomware will continue to be used. Stealing financial information and data is attractive to cybercriminals, but ransomware's ubiquitous factor that anyone values their data. The fact that any user from home to business could potentially need to pay makes it an incredibly effective tactic that cybercriminals are likely to continue to use. Now, we've been hearing about these for years, and in fact, some of you watching may have been a victim of a failure somewhere in the supply chain, so it's probably no surprise it appears on the list. But our supply chains are growing much more complicated, and the expectation of assurances are also increasing in significant ways. It's not uncommon now for provider X to use provider Y backed onto a different cloud service hosted in a different data center. And these stacks of technology and supply chains growing longer makes verification and managing your own security ecosystem much harder. Definitely something we have to have our eyes on through the next couple of years. We spent years trying to make sure that security leaders had a seat at the table to be able to influence the business and help the business understand how to de-risk cybersecurity. Well, now we have it, but that comes with an expectation of even greater business and soft skills in addition to the traditional technical and leadership skills. Being able to work effectively with other business leaders, being able to interface with the board and translate cybersecurity into business terms is going to be an ongoing area of development and a theme for 2023. Now, of course, this isn't a new trend for organizations. In fact, coming out of the back end of the pandemic, a surprising number of organizations had to rush to even greater remote working than ever before. But paying off the debts of that transition is likely to be a hefty theme for 2023. Lots of customers I've spoken to had to rush to deploy new capacity, new cloud services, new infrastructure to deal with these remote working trends. And whilst some of that has snapped back after the pandemic, much of it has become a new default way of working. And so too, security practices will need to evolve to cover this new infrastructure and this new default. Now, we've all been dealing with vulnerabilities in software products for a long time now, and we understand this relationship that lower quality code or mistakes by developers can lead to catastrophic exploits that impact cybersecurity and resilience of all of our businesses. Embedding cybersecurity practices, making sure that code quality is high as a part of a software development lifecycle has been an ongoing focus for many organizations. But a surprising number of businesses are now finding they have to embed DevSecOps into more places. For example, there's lots of code being written to orchestrate cloud services by businesses that weren't traditionally in software engineering or using the likes of an SDLC. That means that we're going to see a huge push for DevSecOps in lots of places that don't have that history of trying to adhere to those practices. It's good they have that focus, but it's going to be a bumpy 23 getting them adopted. So we're going to be releasing a series of videos exploring each of these in more depth. And you can listen in for top tips on how to navigate each of these challenges, be it rationalizing your security spending or looking at particular technologies more closely. We want to make sure this stuff's really actionable for security leaders and reduce your stress in 2023. I suppose if I was to give you one top tip immediately, I don't think I've ever seen such a long list of concerns for CISOs, different things that we have to think about as a part of our leadership strategy. Take a look at each of those, the trends from cloud, from remote working, the pressures of an extended supply chain, new regulations, and try to look at the trends behind those top titles. It's surprising how many of them actually come back to common security practices or initiatives. It's quite possible to run one project that might pay dividends in 3 or 4 of these areas. If you keep focusing on the macro list, it's going to be overwhelming and hard to develop an overall set of priorities. Get down a level 2 and pick the things that can influence your surface area the most overall. Look forward to reviewing these trends with you at the end of 23, scoring how we did, and probably coming up with a new list for 2024, though I bet phishing will still be on it.